This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions, www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure to subscribe and welcome to our circle.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Patricia W. Fisher with Readers Entertainment Radio, and a big shout-out to everybody on the West Coast. I know things are just insane out there, and terribly frustrating is just one word. I'm sure there's many colorful adjectives that many people are using right now, but please just stay safe and well for everyone. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to all of the firemen, firewomen, everyone helping, first responders, and even the people we don't even think about that go out and rescue pets that people have left or have gotten lost in the chaos. So thank you so much for all of that. We really very much appreciate the wonderful work you do. So today we're talking to someone who is on the West Coast, and she's a fabulous author named Karen Rose. She is a former high school teacher of chemistry and physics, and she lives in Florida with her husband of more than 30 years. Her debut novel, Don't Tell, was released in July 2003, and since then she was published more than 15 novels, 2 novellas, and her 24th novel, Say No More, was released this month. Karen's books have appeared on the bestseller list of New York Times, USA Today, London Sunday Times, and international book lists. And to date, her books have been translated into more than 20 languages. So welcome to the show, Miss Karen Rose. How are you, dear?
I'm fine. Well, first of all, thank you, and I'm fine, thank you.
So I was reading your biography because I absolutely love reading the biographies of authors just to kind of see if I can figure out their journey. But you started as a chemical engineer, and I had, that from chemical engineer to writer, that has to be a very cool journey. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, actually, I know a number of authors who were something else before they were authors.
For sure.
So I'm definitely not alone in that. I was a product development and quality assurance engineer for a very large consumer company in the Midwest, and I worked there for over a decade. And towards the end part of that, I started traveling a lot internationally, and there were no ebooks back then. This was in the 90s, so there weren't any ebooks. And if there were ebooks, they were all the ones I'd been, tasked to read for school back in high school. But so I could only bring so many books in my luggage. And when I would get to these countries, most of the time I didn't speak the language. So the TV was pretty useless to me. And I got bored because I'd finished my books, and I'd go to the local bookshops, and all they sold were the top authors whose books I'd already read. So I started writing stories in my hotel room and on airplanes, at airports, because I was bored. And so eventually, though, that kind of I got hooked, and it kind of became it was the time I took for myself. When the kids were small and I put them to bed and I sit down and write, and so it was a hobby. And I never intended to be a writer. I had a job, but it was for fun, and I didn't tell anybody. My husband knew, and 2 of my friends knew, but that was it. And so finally, my husband, this was probably around 98, 99. No, it was about 97, 98. He brought home a book from the used bookstore because he used to take the children to the library or the bookstore to the mall to give me a few hours to myself so I could write every weekend. And so he brought home this book. He said, I found this book, and it was called How to Market Your Romance Novel. And I still have it. It cost him 25 cents. Yeah, it's a 25-cent book. And he said, you should do something with your book. And so being the engineer, and I was a spreadsheeter and a flow charter, and I made this whole plan, and I sent out a bunch of excerpts and the query letters, et cetera, and I got back some very nice rejections, and I would have been okay with that. I would have been okay with that. But my husband, then he said no. He says, I went on the internet, and again, this was in the late 90s. I'm shocked that the Romance Writers of America even had a website back then, but they did. And so he said, here's this group of women who write like you do. Maybe they can give you some tips on what to do next. And so I kind of was getting this like sweet nudge, go do something. And so I joined the Romance Writers of America, and I said, this is something. That was probably the first point where I thought I might want to do something with this book. And so, I did all the things you're supposed to do, and this was back in, when you had to go old school and actually send letters to people.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, like, emailing an agent was, you just didn't do that. Was rude. That was the height of rudeness back then. And so,
it was abhorrent. No self-respecting author would send an email.
Not back then. Oh, and an attachment with AOL downtime, the download times. I mean, no. What are you trying to do? Make yourself a pariah in this town? But anyway, it worked out. I signed with an agent, and I sold my first book in 2001, and it was published in 2003. And right about that time, between the sale of the book and the publishing of the book, 9/11 happened, and I lost my job because I was in manufacturing, and manufacturing took a real hit after 9/11. And so I was like, I had to kind of reinvent myself, actually. So I had my own business for a while, and then after I wrote my second book, I became a school teacher. That was when I became a school teacher. And so I wrote my first half a dozen books while I was working, either on my own or as a school teacher. And I finally got to the point where, and honestly not hard to do, especially in Florida, because I live in Florida most of the year. And I was, school teachers don't get paid very much anywhere, but they really don't get paid very much in Florida. And when I figured I could make more money by being able to write like an extra book a year, that's when I was able to quit my job. So that was like in the late 2000s. So engineer to romance writer or romantic thriller writer was, it was a journey. It wasn't one I intended to take. It was almost like a series of life events, kind of just. I felt like one of those little balls in the pinball machine. Every time I hit one of those, one of the little things, the paddles or something, that knocked me into something else. And so there was this kind of this path that I took because things happened. Things were laid before me, and so that's how I ended up here. And so,
and it's interesting.
I look back and it's.
Yeah. And I'm sure that when you walked into that room for the first time with the writers, you thought, oh, the people who get why I'm writing what I do. Because
I almost didn't show up there.
Oh, really?
They frightened me because this is actually a funny part of it, because the first meeting I went to was in January of 1999, and I remember this because I didn't go in. I sat out in the parking lot. It took place in a library at that point.
Okay.
And I sat out in the parking lot, and I watched the door, and I watched all these women going in, and they were all laughing and talking to each other, and I thought, they're real writers. They meet me. I'm just a fraud. They're going to know I'm a hack. I'm not going in there. And so I did it. And so I waited. And finally it was like 10 minutes after the hour. And it's just rude to go into a meeting for the first time 10 minutes late. And so I went home. And my husband was waiting for me. He's waiting for me at the doorway. He goes, you didn't go in, did you? And I was like, no. He said, next month,
busted.
I am taking you. And he said, and I will slow down the car. I will push you out. It would be one of those tuck and roll babies. And if you don't want to get cold, you'll go inside. Because it would have been February in Cincinnati. We were in Cincinnati then, in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, I'll go. And so I did. And the first meeting was, again, I was sitting in the back, kind of just eyeballing everything that I see. But what surprised me was how many aspiring writers were there, and how warm and generous with information and training some of the more established authors were. And one of the first ones I met that, I still stay in contact with, and she's still a fabulous person, is Lori Foster. She truly took us under her wing. And I mean, we had an event. It was like a weekend conference we had back, and it was that same year. She sat us down one night because we had like a pajama party in her room, and she sat us down and she passed around a copy of her contract. And then it wasn't her contract. It wasn't a contract. It was her her earnings, her royalty statements.
Okay.
And it had, nothing was redacted, and it had all of the information there. She goes, this is what it looks like, and this is what you have to learn how to be able to read. Because they're really confusing back then. Well, they're still kind of confusing, but some of them are laid out better than others. But I mean, to provide that level of training and sharing was, to me, it was not something I expected. And and I made a lot of really wonderful friends, and they're still friends to this day. So it's been more than 20 years, and I saw a lot of the friends I made at the beginning are still, very, very close to me.
Yeah, I think it's important that, for a couple of reasons, to have a writers group, because you don't have to explain why you're doing what you're doing. It's just, I want to write this story. No one's like, well, why do you want to write about somebody killing someone with an ice pick? It's like, because, and then they get worried. So, you want people around you that say, oh, well, are you going to stab him this way? And that's good. But also to help kind of guide you, it's like, is this a reasonable offer? Or is this, I remember having people in our writers group, one lady really, really, really wanted to get published, and she came in and she said she'd gotten a book deal, and then she basically said something that we were like, wait a minute, you're paying them, you're paying your editor, and we're like, whoa, stop, and she was just devastated. But I think, and she pulled out. She's like, never mind, which was good because like a year later she actually got her legit thing. But you need those things because I think we all get to that point. It's like, I just want to be published, and to have those friends to say, just hang tight, you've got this, is a big deal. And I'm sure you have that.
It really is.
Yeah.
I have built a very close circle of friends, in different parts of my writing life. And some of my friends are, I can share successes. Some I brainstorm with, and they know the details of my books before I even, have the proposal on the page. They're helping me, helping me organize my thoughts, and well, this would be cool, or that would be cool, or what have you ever thought about this? And those, all my friends are invaluable to me in so many different ways. But the authors who help you organize your thoughts, and especially once you figure, kind of started to, no, I don't know if anybody ever figures out this business because it's constantly changing. But once you kind of get your feet on the ground, then you pay it forward and you help other people. But then you're at a different place, and you're like, okay, so now I have this thing I do that's a business. Writing is a love, but it's also a business. And I need to have people in my life that I can bounce ideas off of. And sometimes when I get stuck, I have a friend I call, and she was actually one of the people I met at my very first RWA convention, and she and I have been best friends ever since. But I'll call her and I'll say, I'm stuck. And she goes, well, just tell me about it. And I'll talk, and I'm sure she's just like, she's cross-stitching or playing solitaire or something on the other end of the phone, but actually I get and she says in all the right places, and by the end of the call it's like, oh, now I know what I have to do. And sometimes I just have to talk it out. And so the people that allow me in my life that allow me to do that in a way that's productive, they're invaluable to the process.
Oh, for sure. I think sometimes it just gets us also to get out of our own way and get out of our own heads when we're discussing that. So have any of the people that you worked with when you were a chemical engineer or teacher, have they offered, if you've kept in contact with them, have they offered suggestions for any of your stories as well?
Let me think. They've appeared in some of my stories with their permission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's, as general characters. Never. Only
Sure.
one time did I actually base a character on somebody I knew that was, I mean, a close replica, and it was by her request, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, she was my karate teacher. She was my personal trainer and karate teacher and very good friend. And one day we were working out, and she's an international martial arts champion. And she said, you know what, I want to be the heroine in one of your books, and I want to get the hot guy. And she already had her hot guy all picked out. It was a fellow athlete. She showed me his picture. I'm like, okay. And I said, I think I can do this for you. I said, but I'll have to change your name and the way you look because you'll be having sex in this book, and frankly, I just can't visualize you in that particular way. And I was like, no, we are not that kind of friends. But she loved it. She read the book, and I actually had to tone that character down because my friend is so awesome and so accomplished. And if I had put all of the things in this character that she is, nobody would have believed it because she's just really awesome. But so I toned her down to the character a little bit. She loved it, and she's in the military now. And I did a book signing right after her book came out. I did a book signing, and she was like to everybody, you have to buy this book. This is my book. You have to buy this book. I'm in this book.
That is great.
So she liked it. But, yeah, they will often appear in my books, but it's just in terms of offering me information, I don't know that I've ever gone back to a former colleague I mean, I meet all kinds of people in this job, and sometimes I meet because I'm looking for information, and sometimes I meet sometimes they correct me. Somebody who's written me saying, you did this wrong. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Can you be my consultant to the future? And they're like, oh, yay. So I've kind of built up my group of resources. One of my oldest friend, and I was in her wedding. She was in my wedding. Her husband is an ER doctor and has been, since the late 80s. No, since the early 80s. And he will give me medical information. I'm like, well, if I need this kind of a wound to do this kind of a thing, what should I do? Like, I need somebody who gets wounded and they're out of commission for 3 days, but in 3 days I need them back to fighting. I need them back to at least be able to walk, Right. Or I need a bullet wound that will bleed out in this amount of time. How do I do it? And so usually it's a very, very specific kind of a question. And he never tells me he's too busy for me. So I love him too. But yeah, so not so much coworkers, but definitely friends. Friends in kind of my outer group, my group of friends that are not part of writing, help out. And I have met a lot of very lovely people along the way.
So I guess at this point he's like, oh, she's calling, and he's not worried that you've called about inflicting a wound with a machete. That's good.
Well, it was funny because I wrote one book, and God, people are going to think I'm a really horrible person. I'm really not. I'm a nice lady who knits, but people in my head do terrible things. The character needed to cut open someone's chest and take their heart out. And I know that it's really hard to do. I mean, it's much harder to do than they show in the horror movies. So I called my friend and I said, how does this done? How do you cut somebody, heart out? And he said, well, this is what you got to do. Because he had actually done some field work. He'd had to do a field amputation once. Not like on a military field, but just out, not in a hospital, at the scene of an accident. And he said, you use a Sawzall. And, for people who aren't listening, a Sawzall is basically it's a very small power saw that is sometimes they have cords, sometimes they're cordless. Usually they're cordless. And they can be used on anything from field operations. Sometimes firefighters will use them to get into what we call hurricane windows, Miami-Dade windows. The ones that don't just break with a rock. They're very useful. So he says, and this is how you do it. He said, if you really want to know, he says, go to Home Depot or Lowe's. He said, and go to the section with the saws. And he said, and ask someone if you can handle one. He says, just don't tell them what you're doing it for. I'm like, do I look stupid to you? Do you think I'm dumb? I'm not going to tell people. And so what ended up happening, I'm like, as soon as I hung up with him, I opened the door, and we had hired contractors to completely renovate our house at that point, and we were doing it in stages. It took a whole year. And I opened up the door, and there at my feet was a Sawzall. I mean, an angel sang, and I was like to the contractor, "May I pick this up and handle it and see how heavy it is?" And he looked at me. I mean, there were posters of my books, on the wall, so they knew I was a murder writer. And he was like, "Okay." I said, "I just want to touch it. I just want to see how heavy it is."
Right. Can I, make it do what I want? And yeah.
It was like,
I mean, all that stuff's important.
The store, and there it was. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
there it is.
And I often tell people that, if you're an author and you want to I'm not going to go out and kill somebody to understand the experience, but there are certain things.
Right.
Firing a firearm is one of them. And if you're curious, there are ways just to go and try it once at a gun range, and it's very safe. And you try it, and it makes a difference, especially if, like for me, I'm really short, and I have short arms. And what I found out why. So you see so many, you see movies where the people are at the gun range, and most of the time they have on like ball caps with a bill. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because the bullet casing flies back once you fired a shot. And for most of the people who are bigger and taller than me, they don't really need that protection, but it's for eye protection. So because if the casing flies back, it's less likely to hit you in the face. And that's why you wear goggles, and that's why you wear, ear protection and all that. But the first time I did it, because I'm short, and I had on a T-shirt that day that was a V-neck, but it wasn't like, cleavage exposing. It was just a regular V-neck. And the casing flew back, and it went down my shirt, and it went down my pants, and into my boot, burning the whole way down because they're hot.
Yeah, they are.
And the teacher, he said, in my 20 years of teaching, I've only seen that twice. I was really surprised he'd seen it once before me. I felt a little bit disappointed. But, so if you've got a character who's shorter, these kind of things, the just the vibrations on your arm, things like that, it does make a difference. And the sound makes a difference, and understanding. So there are things that you can do to help the process along.
Right, like the buzz in your thumb hours later if you've been at the gun range for a while, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that we think of. And speaking of shooting, killing somebody, you did so in the newest book, Say No More, Sacramento series book 2. Yes.
Well, lots of people. That happens in all my books.
I know. So this just came out last month. So tell us about your latest release.
Well, Say No More is the second in my second in my Sacramento series, and every book is standalone, but there's a story arc that will follow all the books, and that is this cult called Eden. And in the very first book, you meet Gideon Reynolds, and you meet Gideon Reynolds, and Gideon is he is an escapee from this Eden cult, and you start to learn how terrible it is. It's in Northern California. They are a very religiously fanatical cult, much as many of them are. And he's escaped, and he has towards the end of the book, he is able to be reconnected with his sister, who also escaped, but who has avoided him basically the entire 13 years that she's been free. And he doesn't know why. He's hurt, but she has undergone terrible trauma in the cult, and she spent the last 13 years of her life trying to forget. So she, in the beginning of Say No More, and it's Mercy's story, this is her story of ceasing to try to forget, and turning back, remembering, and using the anger that she feels to help take down this cult, and to take down the person who hurt her, or the person who caused her pain.
Wow. And so, is that hard? Are those kind of subjects, do you have to get really deep? Is it, I mean, I know you do in the sense of it's a deep topic. It's not written at all with, flippantly by any means. But, I mean, do you have to balance your day or your writing time with something not as dark, or how do you do that?
Well, I'll save the darkest of the scenes sometimes to do in one day. I'm a sequential writer. So what I'll do is I'll know something has to happen in a scene, so I'll just make notes, and then I'll go on. If I'm not in a mind space to write that on a certain day, I'll write them all in one day. But I don't kind of space it out. Once I'm in a book, I'm in a book, and that's all I do for until the book is done. That's the way that's the way I'm able to hold on to my concentration. It's really hard for me to stay focused and to kind of pick up that thread of the book. And once I finally find it, I don't want to let it go.
Okay. And will you have six books in this series as well, like you have with the others?
No, sometimes there's 6 books, sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 3. I have one series that's only 2, so it kind of just depends on where I am, with working on it. This book is a trilogy. There may be other stories that come out of it, but this book is a trilogy. So Say No More is book 2, and Say You're Sorry is book 1. Say No More is book 2, and Say Goodbye is book 3, and it will come out next year.
Okay. And then what do you have planned for after book 3?
Well,
to take a nap, to sleep?
Yeah, I did actually. I turned in the book and I take a nap for a whole week. I just turned in revision, so again, it's like, okay, yesterday was a veg day. We sat around, watched videos, and I knitted and I read a book.
Nice.
But I re-listened to an audiobook that I'd listened to many times before, and I just knitted, so that was kind of my chill out time. But the next series I'm starting to put together, and I don't know enough about it yet to speak of it, but it's going to have a fun setting and a really interesting and colorful setting. And so yeah, I'm just putting those ideas together now. Oh,
cool. Oh, well, there you are. There's a tease. Colorful and fun. That sounds like a wonderful time well spent.
Yes. I will have a good time writing that series, I'm sure. And writing the Sacramento series has been it's been interesting in a lot of ways, because when up until 3 or 4 years ago, like many Americans, I thought California was like LA. I'd been to San Francisco and I'd been to LA, and I'm like, too many people. And I grew up in the suburbs, but I'm really not a city person. And there was just a lot of people, and I just thought, I think most of us who have never really been to California think that's what it is. Like, everybody thinks Florida is Orlando, and there's so much more to Florida than that. So when my writing group is in Northern California, so I started coming out here and met a woman in Sacramento. And Sacramento is one of the easier cities to fly in and out of. If you're going to go to Northern California, there's really no easy way to get there. So you fly into Sacramento and drive for 3 hours, or you fly into San Francisco and drive for 3 or 4 hours, depending on traffic. And so I would fly to Sacramento, and I have a friend that I would sit with. And it was funny because when I wrote the first Sacramento book, she took me around town and was showing me stuff. We just, her and one of her daughters in the family minivan. And one of the places I wanted to go was the FBI building in the suburb of Sacramento. And so they just built a new one, because the first time I went, when I was scoping things out, they were in their old building. So they just built this new building. And so we went out and pulled into the parking lot, and we just sat in the visitor's lot for a while. And I kind of just got the layout, what is it like here? Because it's not in a really populated area. It's not far. It's in a suburb. So, but it's kind of got a lot of land around it. And when you look to I guess would be the east, you can see the foothills of the Sierras. And so, I'm just kind of getting the lay of the land. And then I realized we've been there for a while, and now my friend is probably on a watch list because we sat in the FBI parking lot for too long. But
I was going to ask, did anybody approach you guys and say, you've been sitting here for 28 minutes.
I know. We've got your license plate is now on file. But no, so I would do that, but I'd make the drive to Northern California, and it was so much different. I mean, I knew that there were these redwood forests, but I'd never driven through one. And I knew from some of the books I'd read that there were parts in Northern California that were isolated, but you just don't really have an idea of it until you drive through it. And you can drive for hours and never see a person. There are places on the California coast and up in the mountains that you don't get a cell phone signal. And I mean, I got a cell phone signal when I went on a photo safari in South Africa, a number of years ago, and I got a really good cell phone connection from the safari vehicle out in the bush. And there are places in Northern California you just can't make a phone call, and that just blew my mind. And it was like, okay, so this is really not the place I thought it was. And so being able to explore. And not so much this year because of COVID, but in previous years we've done a lot of driven around. My husband took me. There's a scene in Say No More that happens up. It's near Mount Shasta. We went up to Mount Shasta and we explored and we drove around. I'm like, oh yeah, I could hide a cult here. I could hide a cult there, And so it was an eye-opening experience for someone who'd been kind of an East Coast girl her whole life, and I had I'd only flown to the West Coast, like Seattle. I'd been to Seattle and, like I said, LA and San Francisco, and that was really all I knew of the West Coast were the cities because I went there for business. And this was really eye-opening, and it made writing a series in Northern California a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've lived in Texas a lot of my life, and so we lived in St. Louis for a while, and it was funny because people would make comments about driving to Florida for a vacation. And I'd say, wow, it would take us 7 of those 8 hours just to get out of Texas because we were in San Antonio. And they'd looked at us like they had no idea what we were talking about. And then the terrain changes so drastically if you just drive I-10 basically through the state. If you start out in the desert and the mountains, and then it's just like, then you'll get some of the hill country, and look, now it's the piney woods, and now it's just like this whole swath of information. And of course, people always think there's cows everywhere and cowboys and cowboy hats and all sorts of stuff. So
it's a stereotypes we have. Oh, I remember that one of the times I flew I was flying to Europe for a book fair, and my publisher bought my tickets, but I would have to fly in and out of Miami. And she goes, well, that's close to you, right? I'm like, well, it's actually at least a 4-hour drive away. I don't mind doing it because it may not meant I could have a direct flight and I didn't have to connect. I said, but Florida's a big state. It takes, I think, it's like 15 hours to drive from the top to the very bottom, and that's not even the Keys. I'm just talking about Miami. So so the states are so big, and we drive I-10 when we make that trip from Florida to California, twice a year there and back, and that I-10 going through Texas, they're like, okay, so it was like 2 days in Texas. I feel like this was SpongeBob 2 days later.
Yes. I don't know where we are. Yeah, we actually a couple of years ago, I said, okay, family vacation, we're going to take road trips because that's what we used to do all the time. So we drove out and went up into New Mexico and Arizona, California, and back. And having driven for long periods of time, I'm thinking, we could make that trip from San Diego to San Antonio in 2 days. And we did, but we were insane. Because that's a long drive both days.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
But there's a lot of places to hide bodies. If people were wondering, four books. 4 books.
4 books. Yeah. You always have to qualify that. Christine, Christine Fian's one of my friends. We did a library event last month when the book first came out, and we were laughing that we have to be really careful when we're out in public talking about murder and things like that, because we forget that there are people around, and you start talking. And then one time we went to one of the local restaurants here. We looked up, and the bar had gone. We were waiting in the bar for our table. Bar had gone completely quiet, and every single person was looking at us. So we just kind of smiled and waved. Hi there. So you have to be careful who's listening.
Yeah. I know.
If you have time, I can tell you a funny story about when I forgot.
Oh, please. We've got 10 minutes. Do it.
Right. So in my first of my Cincinnati books, there was a character who the MO of the killer. He would shoot them in the head and make sure they were dead, and he would go on. And so he needed to steal a car. She's in an all-night parking lot of a grocery store, and he steals her van. He had been driving a vehicle. He throws her under that vehicle, and he takes her van and he drives away. And I'm not really sure if it was just my editor had a soft spot for this particular character. I was not allowed to kill her. And that came through loud and clear in the margin. She goes, "This is an example of gratuitous violence. I do not want this character to die." And I was like, can't he just hit her in the head instead? And I was like, but no, because that's just like, this just doesn't make any sense. So I spent 2 days. She was firm. She was firm on this because I emailed her. I'm like, I mean, that is just not what he does. It would be an inconsistent behavior. She said, find a way, because I don't want this person to die. And I think it was because she had been in the all-night grocery store buying dog food. She had like a lot of tools. You find out she runs a pet shelter. And so she was buying, I think it was because of the dog food. I think if I'd had her buying, I don't know, buying out the toilet paper aisle, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But so it took me 2 days. I finally had to go back to my ER doctor. He helped me find a way to make this happen so that the character would live, but it would still fit within the story. And then because she had a pet shelter and because I had need of a pet shelter in the next book, I wrote her into the next book, and I had just finished the proposal. And through that, we were actually laughing about it last night. Through that series, every single main character adopts a dog from this person. So by the end of the series, there are like 8 or 10 dogs, and you have to. My daughter keeps track of all this stuff for me. She's one of my editors, and she says, I have to have a spreadsheet just for the pets, because especially in that series, because But so I'd forgotten about it, and it was the day that the first book had come out, and it was a couple days later when the New York Times list was announced. And rather than sitting by the phone all day, the family and I went to Disney World, because we're only like 2.5 hours away from Disney World.
Right.
And we had finished at the Magic Kingdom. We were on a shuttle getting ready to go over to Downtown Disney, which is now called, I have no idea what it's called now, but it's where all the restaurants are. And we were going there to meet a friend. So we were on the shuttle, Disney shuttle with children. And my editor calls, and she goes, "Guess what? You belong. It was Closer Than You Think. Closer Than You Think hit number 7 in the New York Times. Yay!" We went, "Yay!" And she goes, "And I just read the new proposal." She goes, "I'm so glad that Dolores is alive and well." And I said, "That's just all on you." I said, "I would have left her dead under that van." And I heard Steph, and they were like, everybody in the shuttle was looking at me, and my daughter looked horrified. She goes, In a book. She didn't really kill somebody, leave them under a van. It's for a book." It was like the children's eyes were as big as, the spinning saucers.
Well, I laugh because, I was a nurse before I became a writer officially, but, we're always writing in those early stages. And I remember I was in my initial training for IV therapy, and it was like our job, and there was like 5 of us that had gotten hired out of this class, and they were like, "Okay, you can't shoot this in through the IV. It has to be injected. It has to be mixed. You can't, in the raw form." And I was like, "Is that traceable?" And I remember I kept saying, "Is that traceable?" And the the woman teaching the class, you could tell she was initially like, no, I mean, and then after about the 3rd or 4th time, she was getting really uncomfortable, and I just wasn't really thinking it through. And one of the people in my class said, "She's a writer." And then it was like, oh, okay, because this worry of, did we mess up hiring this person? Now I'm concerned.
Well, that's why I always have to say, I'm just a nice mother who knits.
Yes.
I wouldn't actually do any of those things.
No.
The characters that I had to do, they do plenty enough bad stuff for me for the rest of my life.
I know. But it's fun to put those in there, and then, of course, to make up these crazy scenarios. I think that it just is that wonderful escape that we all have, like, especially if we get to kill people that were terrible to us at some point in our lives or were awful, It's,
I may or may not have done that.
Yes. Yes.
The fact that the character that was getting their heart cut out, that may or may not have been, somebody who was mean to me. Although any resemblance to any living person, alive or dead, is purely coincidental. But
that's right. Yes. Yes. Well, and we all take tips from Sue Grafton, who initially had planned to, she was just going to write one book because she was so angry with her horrible divorce and killed off her ex-husband in her book. And she said by G, she was cured. So.
It is extremely cathartic, Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff that has gone in my books that's either happened to friends. Some of them have happened to people that, a couple of things have happened to me. People I'm very close to, and it allows a feeling of control where there is none. But at least for that moment, you as the author, and then hopefully as a reader, will read these books and see bad people getting what's coming to them, and you're like, okay, there is good in the world. It makes you feel like there's logic and justice when in many times there just simply isn't. The killers don't get caught. People don't get punished. People get off on technicalities. They shouldn't get off on technicalities. And it's, and it's just a truth. But, in the books that we write, we can control the outcome, and that's a nice feeling.
It is. Because you want to make it. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want it to be easy, like, this easy process. Because then people are like, oh, okay. But you want it to be a struggle because it just makes that ending so much better. Like, they fought it. And yeah. You want to make sure that they get that book hangover and they wanted it and they're glad for it.
Yes.
You want them to have that, yeah. So has there been anything that you have not written about yet, like genre-wise? Are you wanting to do something totally different, or what do you think?
Well, for now, I think even if I ventured into another genre, it would still have thriller overtones, because I did try to write a short Happy Christmas story like 2 years ago, and it turned into murder. And it's just I really wasn't even trying. I was trying not to write murder, but murder just happened. So it's like, okay, murder happens. I was gonna have to be okay with that. But whatever genre, I don't think I could write comedy.
Okay.
But there are other things that I've kind of looked at, but they would all have some kind of suspense or thriller overtones to them, because I just can't help myself.
Yeah.
Like I said, murder happens.
It does. But justice happens too, and that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Well,
that's what's cool about
it. It allows me to also, it allows me to tell stories of characters who have faced very steep and seemingly insurmountable odds to get their lives back, to get their personal power back. And how much time do we have?
About a minute.
Okay, so real quickly, I was asked very early on in my career if I felt like I was doing a disservice to victims by portraying so many victims in my book. And what I have found over the years is that people who have been through similar experiences find that is their voice, that they find that my stories have given them a voice, and stories like mine give them a voice. And I get emails to that effect even to this day. I read your story, and I couldn't tell my husband about my previous relationship with a domestic abuser, so I gave him your book, and now he knows. And things like that. It's a very special relationship with readers, and it allows me to put some order and chaos to the world in my head, but it also allows readers to have a voice and to find justice on the page, even if they didn't find it in real life.
Absolutely, and I so appreciate that you do that. That's a wonderful gift.
It's a gift for me, when I get these emails and be able to touch a reader's life in such a profound such a profound way, and it truly is a gift.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I was talking to Karen Rose. If you want to find her, her books, her website, she's at KarenRoseBooks.com. You can also find her on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And her book right now, Say No More, is out. So everybody pick it up and keep on reading.
This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions.